had a discussion on what the topics were going to be, and one of the items that came up was, hey, we have all these automation talks. I put my name, or the title of my presentation out there, so Paul naturally assumed it was going to be another one about automation. I said, no, this is actually the anti-automation talk. So this will give us a chance to balance out the scales a little bit with some of what we normally see. I'll get into the title later, but let me tell you a little bit about Argo. I lead the QA team there, and Argo, let's see if this is, okay. So Argo Data is a software development company, and a lot of the products that we develop are are built on analytics. This is some general profile information about our business, the leadership there, and what I want to point out to you is this block right here that demonstrates the seriousness that Argo takes into research and development. What are we typing this one? If I have to, I'll drive from behind the podium, but I'd rather not.
We're going to get a couple batteries and try this.
Okay, I'll drive the podium. All right. So you can see here from the title that we talk more about research and development, that those investments, what they do is they allow us to be innovative, inventive in the way that we take technology and we work on making efficient processes for our customers. These are some of the products. And Sabru's here, he works on the healthcare side. Steve is there with central payments and teller payments, which is what tellers use in banks. Minal is working on commercial lending and pitches in with a variety of other things that she's very good at. But we have a diverse set of products. This is kind of the portfolio of those technologies, and I just put it up here. I don't expect you to memorize anything here, but any one of those blocks, or the relationship between those blocks, is the landscape of what we have to test. These are some of our customers. And as we get into fraud, these are some of the additional clients that we have at Argo. All right. So that's the world that we live in Argo. Lots of products, lots of research and development when we develop those products. And then we take them and we make them ready for that list of clients that you just saw. Do you think I'm set? All right. Thank you. I'm going to talk to you about testing right now. This is what I want to share. I have a framework that I think about the world of QA in. I have a framework for the way that I think about software quality and what we do in testing. So I'm going to share that with you so that you'll understand the perspective that I'm coming into our profession with, and how later in this presentation I have made choices on how to take techniques, how to take methods and apply it, but it's not just like out there into some sort of amorphous shape. I have a way that I think about our profession. Paul has a saying that he got from one of his bosses that words matter, and I assure you that they do. When I was getting into QA, I met somebody who had been, 25 years, okay, 25 years in software quality. She said, your organization's mission, like it should be in all QA organizations, is to reduce risk and eliminate waste. And I thought, yeah, I think that's right. And I started to think about it more, and I'm like, yeah. The problem was it didn't necessarily inspire me. It didn't make me think, okay, this is what we can be someday. It was just kind of this is our mission. And I started to think about the words that are used a lot and how I define them. Okay, let's just start with some simple ones. What's testing? In a word, testing is detection, all right? There's 4 things that most testing organizations do, and you're gonna probably do all of those. And, but if you would just distill it down into those particular items, it would be it would be build confidence in the products. We would ideally reduce surprises and risk. It would be find the defects, ideally the really nasty ones as quickly as possible. And lastly, provide important information. That's probably what you do at your QA organization. Now, you could add some additional things at your testing group. You could add some additional bullet points to it, but in most cases, it boils down to those 4 things being at the core of what we do. All right, what's quality assurance? In our profession, when people who write the books and all that talk about it, they think of it a little bit differently. In a word, so testing being detection, quality assurance, prevention. All right? Now, if there's a QA organization where you're really working on prevention, then those bullets look a little bit different, I think. Now, I came up with some of this on my own, but I really believe that a QA organization is going to be, not just reducing surprises, but getting ahead of those and identifying the risks. That a staple, obviously, is that you're preventing defects before they ever occur. And that you're continuously improving. Now think about this, the quality of the software development life cycle. I'll get into that a little bit later, but if part of your job and the way that you think about it is how can I improve what development does before they ever send something over to me, then your job, you're walking out that improving the SDLC. Now we may see that in process improvement, we may see it in other types of mechanisms, but at the end of the day, it's our SDLC. Whatever flavor you're in, some iterative, agile, waterfall, wagile, whatever it is, if you're improving the quality of that SDLC, you're on target with the mission of a QA organization. The final one, and I don't know if you've ever thought of this, the moment I heard it, I thought that's the truth. The ultimate goal of a QA organization is to protect the company brand. Now, if you think of it in that terms of your job, then you're on target with what a QA organization does. If you think, these are the things that I did this week, or this is a process that we're starting to put in place so that we can protect our brand or improve it, now you're in line with the way that I think about what's testing, what's quality assurance. Okay, one last definition. Oops, this is an easier one. Okay, what's quality? So I stole this from this guy, Peter Drucker. Quality, and again, there's a million definitions, but I really like this one. Quality is not what we put into a product, but it's what the customer gets out of and is willing to pay for. I like that definition of quality. I'm going to go a little bit further into this framework of thinking. And after I sort of explained to you how I think of software quality assurance, we're going to talk about what do you do when automation really isn't a good option. But you've got to see what is this profession of ours? What is the way that we should think about it? Okay, with this diagram, I'm going to show you any and every type of testing that you do will fit into this. I have $1 for anybody that can give me some sort of testing that doesn't fit in this. Okay, so the whole universe of testing, somehow or another, is going to line up with this. On this side over here is when you're testing an idea. It's on paper, you're testing requirements. There's organizations that write up defects for defects inside of the requirements. Over here are things that you've got an application, you have some sort of product that is under test, and you're either using black box, some sort of, I got a specification, I'm writing test cases for it. It could require tools or not. It could be some sort of non-functional requirement, which would be some sort of requirement that you don't have control over, right? That would be security. You don't have control over what people are going to do to attack your system. That could be usability. You don't have control over what happens when you put your product out in front of people. That could be reliability or some other sort of load, because once you're online, if there's a billion people that show up one moment, you don't have control over that. And the way that we would test for those things falls into that sort of category. There would be testing that's not necessarily written out, but that is driven from your expertise or experience-based testing. There's testing that could come from the study of the past, of defects, and getting strategies around what's occurred in the past, giving us insight into the future. And there could be testing based on, whether it's looking at the code or some sort of structural analysis, where we're looking for memory leaks and so forth, that we would need tools to help us be able to do that. This is pretty much our universe. Any type of testing you do in any SDLC is going to fit somewhere in here. In thinking about this, one of the questions that I was given was, okay, what about Argo? Where do we do various testing types, different parts of the SDLC? I could really use some help on this particular diagram, but the question is, inside of that, where do you spend your effort? If I put that diagram in front of you, could you draw some sort of like circle around, this is what our team does? And you have to ask yourself, well, what's outside of that? And would we get benefit from learning what it is, how to do it, and who knows what, right? But the thing is, we show up every day, and a lot of what we do is very similar to what we did yesterday, last week, the month before, the year before. And so making that shift into something extremely different is difficult and unusual. So a common thing that happens is you get a tool. Maybe you really want to make the business case to go out and spend $80,000 to go buy this tool, and now you feel like you've got to use it, this automation thing, to go accomplish some big deal and save us a bunch of money, and so you have this obligation. Maybe you inherited this tool, and now you've got this kind of way that we use it. We have this sort of thing we did yesterday, last week, last month, on this is what we do. And so I want to challenge you here to think differently about that. When I was asked to describe, okay, what do we do at Argo? Again, this needs help. But I said, okay, if this is the unit test level and integration and system test level and then user acceptance, what are the types of testing that occur at those different test levels? And so this would be testing requirements, if you will. This would be using experience. And a lot of what we spend our hours on is right up here. At the system test level, new functionality, and we do some acceptance testing prior. We may do automation in that mix, depending on our line of business. And we had the ability, either with partnerships with third parties, to do security scans, load testing, or other types of non-functional work. But of all the different types of testing at whatever test level, this was kind of like a single view into that world. Like I said, it needs improvement, but I took a shot. So, I've given you my way of thinking about our profession. So here's a question. I think some of you that have known me know the answer to it. What's the number one reason that most QA managers lose their jobs?
Peter Principle.
So like,
Oh, that is Peter Principle.
The Peter Principle.
Oh.
Yeah. Promoted to least level or highest level of incompetence.
Okay. Failed test automation efforts, according to Rex Black. I read it and I'm like, really? And then I started to see other things that made me realize, yeah, it's very reasonable. What happens is you say, okay, we're going to buy this really expensive thing, it's going to solve our problem, and we'll get, hey, it costs money to make money, and let's do it. So you go out and spend this money, and now you have this obligation to show that it worked. Maybe it did work, but maybe it takes more time. Whatever the case may be, at some point, somebody's upset that you spent a lot, and you have a little or not much to show for it. So this is the number one reason. And this is the reason why I put the title in there, automation angst. Okay, this fear of, oh man, what do we do? Because you're going to get these applications that are your responsibility to either test personally, or you're over that, effort at some level, making decisions on how do we go about it. It's going to look a lot like yesterday, the day before, the week before, the month before, unless you think differently. Unless you really say, hey, can we do something innovative? Can we do something that allows us to approach this completely differently? And I'm going to give you some examples of that today. All right, I have to diverge and show you something. All right, who knows what this is? Whoever doesn't have their hand raised, are you serious? Okay, so this guy right here, what's the name of this? Okay, so I have a son. I've got two sons, and Teddy is really, really into these. This has a generic name, like Kleenex. What's it really called? Yeah, like that. So what's the real name of this? That's not a Rubik's Cube.
Puzzle.
Hand puzzle. Yeah, so hand puzzle is the category of product. Okay, now this particular one, I always thought it was a 3x3, but he told me that no, this is a 3x3x3. That actually, this is a 3x3. It's a little mixed up right now, but it lays out like that. I'm like, oh, okay. Haven't seen one of those before. Then he's like, I really want to get the 2x2. I'm like, oh, huh. Now the trick with this is that there's a strategy on solving this, right? Because whatever's in the middle, that's the correct side. Now you gotta get everything over to that correct side. If you solve everything but the middle, you're hosed. Like, bad strategy. But on the 2x2, there's no middle. You need a completely different strategy. You see where I'm going with this? Okay. So that's the little brother. There's also 4x4. The 5x5. Okay.
Can't have anything to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah, no.
Let's see. I think this one is, I forget the name of this guy right here.
Yuck.
Kirby Copter. This one's a gear shift. Okay. They're kind of similar, but trust me, the strategy is really, really, really different. Okay. Mirror cubes. This is the gold one, and this is the silver one. And they're different. So you can fold it back up, and it looks exactly like this, but the way you solve them is not the same. This one just showed up yesterday, or it showed up on Sunday. Amazon delivers, or the post office delivers for Amazon on Sunday. I'm just waiting for my drone to come next. Okay, this is a Dragon Cube, or no, Dino Cube, and it twists, like that, everything. And I think the last one I have in here is the Gear Ball. This guy's heavy. Okay, so here's a picture of Teddy with all of his puzzles. Now before I get into this a little bit, I want to say I brought with me the elements of a contest. Over there on the white the white table, I'm going to put all of these out there. And what I want you to do is take a look at them sometime, and then I'm sitting right there. Write down what's when, place, show, whatever is the most difficult, and then second most difficult and third most difficult, your guesses. And then I've got some prizes for whoever gets it correct on what's the most difficult. So we had one presentation on this particular book, and here's another one that I really like. So whoever gets it right, I'll let you pick which book you want. We have two in case we have a tie. And for fourth, just put in whatever you think the fourth most difficult is, so that way we can kind of differentiate the group. Did I explain that right, Craig? Yeah. Okay, so these things will be on a number, and then you just write like 2, 8, 6, and then, whatever you think is fourth place, 9, and then give it to me. Make sure you include your email, and I'll figure it out. Okay. So Why did I share all this? Because it took some time. How would you describe your product? How would you think about it? And the tools that you have available to you and your team to use, what are they designed to work with? Because the majority of what's out there is sold to a mass audience, and therefore it's designed to be useful to many people and not to your very specific application. It's going to be something that fits a Rubik's Cube. But when you get more specialized, you have to think about, okay, if I take this thing and try to use it the way it's intended to be used, or I know how to use it, is it going to work? And that's the reason why most QA managers lose their jobs from failed automation efforts. Okay? So, all right, let's say that's the case, and we have this tool, we're using Selenium, and Selenium's not going to work for us because, for whatever reason. I want to say because we weren't in a browser, but would you believe, so Selenium only works with browsers, basically, right?
Yeah.
So there was somebody who was I heard about him, who was really determined to buy Selenium, but their software was like something that ran locally in a Windows environment. And the person, I think this is Joe Valentine, was like, dude, Selenium only works if it's like in a browser, and then finally he got it. So anyway, what do you do about it if you go, this is a tool set we have, or that's out there, what can we do so that we can test more effectively? All right. I'll be switching over to the thing pretty quick. The most common thing you're going to want to do is go, okay, what are our test cases? What are those things that, that we need to do and do often? And okay, let's start doing those. And then we can figure out if we can do them more efficiently. And that's kind of the answer to automation, right? To do things more efficiently. I'll also say this, when it comes to automation, those tools that are out there are really designed to replace the work that's happening at the lowest, like for people that know the least. If you have people that have a level of expertise, the types of things that they're going to want to test should not be those super repetitive things that are going to happen inside the automation. There's some other ways you can use it. You can extend your reach, or who knows what. But in most cases, the skill set the tool set that's sold is for people that are like, hey, this is general work, and we're just going to do lots of it, and so forth, right? But if you think about how can we take the expertise of people and extend it, you've got to start asking questions. Well, I don't know. Let's get some ideas. The order, instead of starting out with test cases, this is the right order. You've got to know the environment intimately. You've got to understand how to use your data, and then the test cases. All right? Switch over. I'm going to demo 3 things for each of those. We had an application that had a lot of screens. As soon as you see lots and lots of screens, you need to realize that you're in trouble. Because automation doesn't like that in between the screens. As long as it can see the objects on the screen, it's usually going to be okay. But as soon as you got to go from screen to screen to screen, it's that in-between area that's going to mess you up. So we had one that was just like the mother of all examples for this. We have a little testing tool set right here that I'm hitting. It's almost like a little phone, if you can imagine. And anywhere on our network, you can hit it and bring up tools that testers can use to, people with high levels of expertise can use at any given time, anywhere for their testing needs. Greg Pascal offered that. And if you want to get smart, hang out with him. Okay. This environment validation. So what this does is it allows us to scan the environment and say, hey, is this set up correctly? So we had this environment that frankly nobody knew how to build. Okay. It took the smartest people that I could find, and I don't know how many times we made a run for it, like 5 5, and then we finally got down to a half day, but we, going through all the steps, it was like something we'd forget, and then we'd have to repeat it all. So this became, now granted, this is a customized, automated way of scanning our environments to know, is the environment ready? If we do work in this space, is it going to yield reliable results? So each one of these is a separate environment. I'm going to click on that one. And so right here you can see areas where it's passing. Each one of these is an individual component that's looking for something specific. So let's say, okay, file system, logs, doc.gen. If I click on that, it's going to show me that they're here. And I think what's happening, the reason why it's red is because we were expecting so many, and logs over time are going to grow. Does that seem reasonable? And what we would do is look for change in the environment, but this is going to give us insight. The fact that we have the ability to know what are we expecting, and is the test environment deviating from that. You can imagine going through this and always having to find the needle in the haystack slows you down a lot. But as we understood more about the environment, it gave us the ability to reliably work in it. So this was one of the things that was put in place to be able to monitor and to ensure that we were in good shape to start spending hours in the environment. The next thing that I want to show you is, okay, so after environment, then what do you get on to? So environment, and then what? Data. Okay, so our data for this particular, for this application, okay, I'm going to show you guys something really brilliant. So Greg made this. He said, this is the culmination of 10 years' work, all right? And this is a way of holding your data, and it's essentially infinitely scalable. But this is our application. Every single parameter, every single thing that you may need to know about the data is captured here. Now this is one of 5 stages, but can you see just from the size of this how much data you would have to account for if you try to do some sort of automation solution? And if we, oops, oh I know, enable comments. So this lets me jump from screen to screen, and we are able to contain all of our data. The entire application is basically described in this really long row. And from there, we're able to know what did we select, or if I wanted to duplicate something slightly, what do I have to do? Copy it to the next row and make that change, right? But this gives us a way of containing every element of data. There's this movement right now called data-driven quality. And if you think about it, you could have 12 scenarios, but if you had the ability to run those quickly, you could test them 1,000, 10,000 times each for each scenario if you understood our user population, what are they doing with our application, right? And so you take the data through a limited number of scenarios, and you basically build out test coverage from that. But what this gave us the ability to do was to create a type of language about the data in this line of business. And then we could start to monitor it and understand where did we want to focus. Because even though this has 500, almost 600 elements, just in stage 1 that we had to account for, we want to be able to expand it. And so if I do show ADE, see if does this accordion view of it. There, boom. Those are the 4 things I care about. So now what I've done is I've brought down just the elements I want to focus on, but if I need to expand it, I have the ability to do that as well. So this became a data strategy for us. The last thing that I want to show is test cases. We had a lot of the test cases that we were using, and Todd, what time do we have to head for elevators?
45, is that right? Yes.
Okay, we're safe. Okay, So we had our test scenarios, right? Or we had our test cases, which were like looking at different functions. And we said, well, we also need scenario ones, scenario-based, real-world sort of stuff. But at some point, you can imagine with this much data, you start to go, there's, like a gajillion possibilities how can we get coverage, and my business partners want me to test everything, and how do I handle that? Has everybody heard of pairwise or all pairs techniques? Okay. I find that a lot of people are aware of it, and the idea is that if you have two particular parameters, you're going to take that one and the one next to it, because it's the interaction of parameters that's going to cause problems, right? Like using Windows 7 and this version of Firefox. It's that combination that causes the problem. Now, if you had another parameter like Windows 7, this version of Firefox, while you were connected to a particular type of printer, okay, and you care about those three things, you can imagine it becomes more things to track. But that's the premise of pairwise. And so I want to show you a pairwise approach, but really show you like how that works. Okay. Hey, it's sticky mics. Okay. So let's just go pairwise. And pretty quickly, you are going to get to okay, let's just do pairwise testing. I want to get to James Bach's site.
That's satisfies.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it here though. I am not seeing it. Okay. Well,
Satisfies.com/tools.
right. I'll just put that in so it'll come up. Okay. There it is. I remember like putting it in as pairwise and it came up, but he doesn't really say pairwise. He says all pairs. So you can go to this, to tools, right, and then you can download some of James' his tools. And this particular one is here, LogWatch, and okay, here it is, all pairs. You'll see all pairs. So if you download this, then you'll get a snippet of information in this particular folder that I've been working on. Okay. It gives you this trusty, let's see if I can have it up for this. Okay, so he gives you this instruction set, and I really like the way that he talks about some of these things. He says, if a bug will be triggered when the value of any one of these three parameters is paired with a value of either of the other two, then we'll catch it with this set of tests. I'm going to create this for you right here. If a bug occurs only when three specific values are triggered together, the set will not necessarily catch it. And then he says, down here at the end, I think this is kind of cool. Oh, another piece of this is, well, essentially what he goes to is that he didn't really achieve all pairs coverage mathematically, but at some point he started to give up on it, and kind of the next tool was about $6,000. So he's like, hey, this is free. And this works pretty well. I have a little bit heavier tool to use, but I really think this one's good. So I recommend it. Okay, so what I did here is I created this particular set of parameters. There's a new law going in for lending, to the good faith in lending, to kind of simplify that into some particular forms. Lisa, did I lose you? Oh, hey, she's back. All right, so does anybody have a calculator? Chris, can you help me out? Okay, so the number of combinations here is going to be 6 times 2 times 6 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 gets us to escrow. Okay, that's it. We're
4608.
4608. Okay, so every combination in here is 4,608, right? Okay, so what I would do is after I get James's tool downloaded, unzipped, and everything, you launch DOS prompt, And then I saved what you were just looking at into a text file. This is SY1. We were playing with it earlier today. And from there, I just do all pairs SY.txt. Let's just call this P7 and run it. Boom. Okay, it's done. All right. That just generated my tests. And so I take these, and what I have are that level of coverage, all pairs, in those 38 tests. Now, let me dress it up just a little bit. Here it is. Whoops. If I go over here, actually this one has 40 because it had an additional parameter in it. But this was built off the same data, and it's just saying use these combinations. And if I run these tests, I will be covering 4,600 to the level of confidence that those two-pair interactions aren't going to cause problems. Okay, I've got that covered entirely at that level. All right. Now, granted, some of these scenarios might look nothing like what you want in the real world. Okay, it's like, why do that? Because we're trying to achieve coverage. So we solve this with common real-world type of testing to make sure that the real stuff is getting in there too. But in order to cover 4,600 things, I'm saying I'm not going to go create an automation tool to do 4,600 tests. Okay? All right, let's switch back so I can end up with 4145. Okay, so right there, I'm talking about environment. How did we address environment? We want to be able to monitor it. How did we want to address data? We came up with this container and this language to be able to speak data for us. And how did we handle tests? We wanted to be smart, all right? And not just bulk testing with a heavy-duty tool, because the heavy-duty tool was going to not work out for us. Okay. At the end of the day, think of this. Everything I talked about equates to work, right? Okay, now we got to work smarter, so let's go do this. A bunch of activity. But is that really the end goal of what we should be doing in testing? When I gave you that framework and I said, what's our purpose? Can we do something greater in our world than just a smarter approach or whatever? And I think that one simple thing that we are able to do is it was the last item under a software testing group. Does anybody remember what that was? Build confidence, reduce risk and surprises, find defects. What was the fourth one? Valuable information. All right? Now, it's one thing to send out data. If you're sending out emails going, hey, this is happening, and nobody's responding, that's a weird sort of communication, right? Think about it. You keep saying stuff to your kids, and they never say anything back to you, you wonder, did they hear that, right? If you're sending out notes and charts with metrics, and nothing's coming back to you, no questions, or what do you think about that? Like, hint, go talk to the people and say, hey, did I answer all your questions perfectly, or what's going on? Okay, here's your secret weapon. It's the data, all right? I got into a conversation with one of our business partners because we were sending out all this formatted stuff, and it wasn't really changing the behavior. And I said, okay, we need to make some changes in the software, like focus to get rid of more bugs. How can we do that? We prioritize this stuff, and he came up with a C chart, and this created this language where we could now focus on a particular type of defect, all right? I have another example that I'm not going to get to just based on time. I would also say that in your defect tool, you have the ability to capture why did that defect originate. Steve helps me out with this so much, okay? And being able to record what the root cause was lets you know where should you be investing your time to improve the quality of the software development lifecycle. If you don't have insight to that and can't go out and influence, look, I'm not going to make changes here in programming error, which is our general one, or things with logic and decisioning, but I can roll this up and I can meet with my dev partners and say, look, man, you guys are having, like, the stuff that you're doing, the more you work, the more bugs you're creating from these things. Can you make changes and improve the way you're doing development? I can show you the real world examples are powerful. okay? And this will help you if you build in the telemetry to be able to say, these are where the big problems are coming from. We can also go back and talk to people saying, okay, look, there's stuff that you need to know, and if you did, it would help you. If I'm a dev manager and I know who on the team can fix the most difficult defects with the first time that they fix it, it's fixed correctly. If you can, like, I can tell you who that is. And whatever they're doing, I would want to multiply that. But if you don't know that, it's going to be really hard for you to know what are the things that are happening that are really great on the team so that we can amplify it. I can give you that insight with my tools. I recommend, if you're sending out metrics, go talk to people who get those and say, what are the questions that you have? That if you knew this, it would help you improve the way you do your work. The beauty about the future is that it's not just a place that we are going, right? It's a place that we're making. And here, where we share ideas, we get to shape that. And so I really encourage you that wherever it is that you are, wherever it is that you work, take quality with you. Thank you.
This presenter, this is her first time making a presentation. Rob is going to lead us for the next little bit, and then we'll have Paul wrap us up. But thank you for volunteering to make your first presentation.
So the topic that I'm presenting today is essential traits of a successful tester. So before diving deep into the traits, let's talk a little bit about the tester's life in both like the traditional world as well as the agile world. We've seen like most of us here would have seen like both sides of the world. So put simply, a tester's life in the traditional approach was like straightforward. Give a tester a spec and a finished piece of software, he was able to verify if it was specified. So not much collaboration happened there, but here in the agile world, like we need to collaborate with all the project stakeholders, like we estimate stories, and then we participate in like release readiness, demo, and then code level automation, revision suite automation. So most of the collaboration is all happening in the agile world. So to cope with such demands, the software tester's role should also change. So here's the agenda. So we briefly spoke about the role of software, the changes in the role of software testers, and this is mostly due to the widespread adoption of agile, move to global delivery models, embracing of service-oriented development style, and the need for greater collaboration. And then we'll talk a little bit about the other traits that are required as well towards the end. And then to begin with, the first important trait is the effective communication. So everyone agrees with that, right? Communication is the key for a successful communication is key for a tester to being a good tester. So voicing end user needs and concerns. So testers are the best proxies for the end users. So we testers verify each and every minor change that goes into production to ensure like, customer satisfaction is not like impediment. Like we are just making sure that is like the first priority. Then clear and courteous communication between tester and developer. So one may have the best technical knowledge and skills, etc., but what if he can't communicate properly, like what he was doing or how he found a bug, that would not make him an effective tester at all. Testers need to have like negotiation skills and persuading skills. So negotiation, like whether we realize or not, like on a daily basis, we negotiate with the developers, the product people, then the product owners, and management, just for time and resources, and also with the Scrum Masters. So persuading skills, we think this is only required for business people, right? The persuading, like it's all about like selling, closing deals. It's not only for the business people, it's for the test engineers too, because we need to learn and negotiate. So persuading skill is like one of the most important skills. Then not only with the communication between developer and the tester, Also the communication between the product group and test engineers. Like we interact with the product owners to get like clarity on the requirements. And then we also interact with the product people to gain knowledge. That way we are like equally knowledge like the product people. And sometimes we can also fill in the role of proxy product owners. So this will, whenever they are not available, we'll be able to keep the team moving forward. So we are like equally knowledgeable. So we are the next go-to person if the product people are not available. So let's talk a little bit in detail about like, each of the sections like we saw in the previous slides. So voicing end user needs and concerns. Let's start with quality. Quality refers to products. A product, we call a product as a quality product if it is defect free. But this quality is being viewed in two different ways by the customer and the producer. For example, from the producer's point of view, like the producer is a developer, so meeting requirements is quality to them. For customer's view, on the customer's point of view, like if it is the product is like fit for use, they call it as quality. So it doesn't matter whether the requirements are met or not, but it should be like the product should be usable. So here's a small question for you all, like which one do you think is most important, the producer view or the customer's view?
Customers.
Yeah, you get it. So, I mean, no matter like even if you meet like 100% of the requirements, if the product is not like fit for use, then that's obviously there is a gap. Like there's a customer gap. Either the requirements are not given to the product owners properly, or the requirements are not like captured properly. So somewhere there is a gap. So in most IT organizations, we come across these two quality gaps, which is the producer gap and the customer gap. So closing these two gaps is the responsibility of a quality function. So what are these gaps? So the producer gap is the difference between what is being specified in the requirement versus what is being built. So the customer gap is the difference between what is being built versus what the customers actually wanted. So if you see the two gaps, like the producer gap and the customer gap, we are responsible to close these two gaps. So how do we close the gap? So closing customer gap is very important because we are building the product for our customers. We need to understand the true needs of the customers. We need to get the right requirements. Only then we can satisfy our customers. So if we get the right requirements, we should be able to produce the developing, the product according to the requirements that we have received. See, here I would like to share a small experience, my personal experience, just to understand this customer gap model. This happened when I was working for a company called SOS Software in California. So we were building like SOA products where we can build web services and deploy the web services and run the web services also. So the way the product works is like we give the setup file to the customers. The customers need to install that setup file, and once the installation is done, it should automatically open up the configuration result. So this is like a brief thing that I'm giving you all. So we tested our product and all the supported operating systems, like we use like AIX and then Linux and Windows and other operating systems as well. So we tested, and then finally, just like 1 week before the delivery of our product, I think it was in 2008, they released like Windows 7. So we never tested it in Windows 7. So we test engineers, we were like proactive. We just went, spoke to the product owners, told them like, do we need to test this, like, do we need to try our product in Windows 7? So we tried it, and ultimately it did not work. So we caught that issue well in advance, and we test engineers, we spoke with the Flexida installation product group, and we solved the issue, and they provided us some updates so that we won't have this Windows 7 compatibility issues. So we were able to close our customer gap. So test engineers, we are responsible for closing these two gaps. The second one is clear and courteous communication. So we all know that delivering a quality product is a joint effort. QA by itself is not one team. We need to be like, work with the developers. Like if an issue shows up in production, it's QA's fault as well as dev's fault. So tactics in communicating issues. So this is very, very important. We test engineers would have come across this in many, many scenarios. Like developers, they don't like when we report issues. They'll be like, why the tester has been testing this? This is the real scenario. Or sometimes we might have like, issues with reproducing the issue. And also the testers on the other hand, they're also frustrated. And most of the bugs comes as not reproducible and classified as we need more information. And then sometimes, it works as designed. So these kind of communication gaps are happening. So an efficient and effective test engineer, he would know like how to communicate the issue, like in a positive way. Like he would be able to report like negative things in a positive way. I mean, of course, we have to stand up for the defects we have filed, but at the same time, we need to be like testers sometimes have to play like different roles. We need to be like diplomats, technicians, and politicians. So it's like a tactic we need to have. We need to have all those things to be successful in our role. So it makes a lot of difference if you report the issues in that way, in reaction, if you just suggest like better ideas without like egoistic voice, it definitely matters. What do you think is causing these communication gaps between dev and QA? It's lack of common understanding, definitely. Not visible, not much visibility into like what each other is doing. Like it's like we don't know like what dev is doing, and developers they don't know like what QA is doing. Then this communication would be like much more challenging if the teams are like geographically separated. On the other side of the globe, definitely that's like overseas communication barrier. But we have like measures to address that also, like with conferencing, that would create like the closer proximity. But still, we need to break the artificial wall between QA and dev. So how can we do that? Anybody, any suggestions? Yes?
Initially, stop using email and get face-to-face with some people.
Yeah, that's one way, yes. Like dev and QA, like interaction should happen very often. That too, in early stages it should happen. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else, anybody?
Along with that, the WebEx type process.
Right, that would break the overseas communication barrier. Yeah, that's right. Let's see. So the first and foremost, we need to change the way of our thinking from an us versus them to all of us working together towards a common goal. We need to bridge the dev-QA communication gap. And how we are going to do that? So that was a very good point, like we need to have them interact, dev and QA interact early and often. So how do we do that? Like how do we make them interact early and often, like testers and developers? Because theirs is like coding and ours is like testing. We can do that. Like we can involve like test engineers in design meetings, and the goal is like design. Involve QA in like the design phase of development. So that would help. And likewise, QA engineers can invite the developers for their test approach review meetings, for test planning, by writing their test planning. So all these, this will help them work together, encourage and appreciate what each other is doing. The second one is like testers and developers need to know that their ultimate goal is maximizing the value of the product, and that happens only through great teamwork. It's not like writing your code and throwing it to the other side of the wall, and testers, it's your responsibility. You shouldn't just challenge your credibility. Like it's like you have to work as a team. So that's most important. So negotiation. So we negotiate on a daily basis. This is a very powerful skill that every tester should possess. So we negotiate with developers to convince them about the defects, to get it resolved. So this is one of the great tactics, to convince them is like difficult. We are dealing with every day we are dealing with this. So we should effective ways to make them understand the big picture. And then just tell them that, that this would be the impact. They can understand the big picture and, and its implications. That way, you should, the developer should be able to, help you get the bug fixed. Negotiate with the product team. As I said, we should be like in close, we should closely interact with the product team to obtain knowledge about the features that are to be developed, and we can be like proxy product owners. Negotiate with management. We have to negotiate with management for time and resources to ensure that quality is not compromised at all. We need to assertively say tell them that this is what is the scenario, and we should use metrics to justify our position. Build consensus with the team when appropriate, and also at the same time voice opposition when necessary. So you should be able to, you should have the courage to assertively challenge unacceptable situations. So we testers need to tap into the powers of persuasion also. We need to have the persuading skills. So this is actually, we think like this is only for business executives, but no, this is actually learning and negotiating. So we need to have this persuading. Sometimes we need to persuade our team to follow the process that we have implemented, or to follow the process that we have defined. So, for all these things, we need to have this persuading skills also. So how do you persuade? It's not like an easy task. We need to establish credibility, which means like the audience have to trust you. They have to trust your opinions. So that's important. This will not happen soon, but this can happen like when you build like good positive relationships between the teams. Pray for common ground. You need to tell them the shared benefits, the process of identifying shared benefits. Then present evidence with examples and metaphors, present evidence to make your positions come alive. Then connect emotionally. This you might think like it's really silly, but effective persuaders can sense the emotional state of their audience and adjust their tone of arguments accordingly. So persuasion is an important skill that a tester should possess. Curiosity. Being a tester means like being curious for everything, just like this child over here. Curious for the whole world. He wants to know like how it works. So we need to have that kind of curiosity. So if you're not inherently a curious person, that's not a stopping point at all. You can harness the power of curiosity by asking like insightful questions. If you see in any company you go, like a good tester will ask like so many questions, like what type of questions, or what else, or how did you fix this bug? Like what kind of logic did you apply to fix this bug? And how can we make the product better? And all kind of questions. So if you're not asking questions, then you're not learning. So asking questions is a good thing, especially for us testers. Be open to learn. The willingness to learn. You need to keep our skills up to date. So if you expand your skills, your opportunities will also expand. So we need to have this learning, the thirst to learn always. Don't take things as granted. Dig deeper to find answers. This is very much applicable to us testers. Like we should not stop just by testing, the functional, written user stories and functional requirements. We need to dig deeper, and we should be like, curious enough to, go explore and, test the corner cases, edge cases. So don't label something as boring. I remember reading a positive, a very positive line of code. It says like, curious mind is not bored at all. This is like very true. Like we testers, we sometimes get like too tired, testing, testing it again and again and writing the same bug reports. But we should find different ways to bring variety in your daily job. So this is one way to get boring things. Like if you are finding like manual testing boring, just switch gears and try automation, try to learn automation. So do something different. I know it is like a monotonous job, but we need to find variety. I would like to share another story here. This was when I was working for Nokia. My previous companies were all like contracting jobs. So I thought like, okay, I'm not feeling challenged anymore in testing. Why not switch gears and do something different? So Nokia offered me that opportunity. I was a tool customizer. I was customizing like Bugzilla for the team needs. I was just customizing the tool. Initially it was like good. For the first 6 months it was like very good. But then again it started hitting me. Oh my God, I'm not feeling challenged here. That's when I realized it's not the job that's making you feel bored. It's just the way that we do our job. Just bring variety. And I know we have to do the same thing again and again, but you know, if you're adding variety and creative and bring innovative things, you can kill the boredom. Being proactive. Proactive is an important quality for a tester. So here's the definition of proactive. Proactive is basically just the idea of decision you have made to attack the problem at the root before it gets wider at customer basis. So we testers need to be like very proactive. So if you are proactive, you should be able to identify issues in the requirements early on. Now we are the agile method of development. We are co-located. We have like easy access to everyone in the team. So we should be able to interact with the product owners, interact them and get clarity on the requirements and get knowledge on the product, how it works. So everything. So this way you will know like what the requirement is, and you should be able to identify issues in the requirements early on. Help catch design issues. So jump into like design discussions. Nobody's going to say no. Just go jump into the design discussions, and that way you are part of the design meetings too. You will be able to catch design issues. And you'll be the first one to identify the best list. So everybody relies on us, so we should be like proactive in finding issues early on. Passion. This one slide is enough for explaining like passion. You don't need like more slides at all. You should be like passionate. You should love what you do. That's the key to success. To be an outstanding tester, you need to be passionate about what you do. As a tester, you need to have the curiosity to learn the whole project in detail, like what the project is intended to do, like who our customers are, and why did the clients go for such kind of requirements, all kind of things. If you have passion, you'll be asking like all those questions within yourself. Don't just do like what is being asked to do. Go beyond to improve the quality of your product. Step outside your comfort zone and volunteer to take up tough projects. This we need to do. Definitely, we testers need to step outside our comfort zone. And if we are in the same place, if we get like too comfortable, that's a clear indication that we are not growing. So we need to step up. Another way is like join QA association, take on leadership roles. Don't wait for somebody to assign roles to you. To take on roles, attend testing meetups, read books, articles, write articles. Speak up at conferences. Thoroughness. This is the core attribute. We need to test our product like thoroughly. Attention to detail. It's easy to identify like glaring issues on the UI, but identifying bugs that are not as obvious is where your expertise as a software tester really comes in. This is one of the most important things like all the testers need to follow, that write effective bug reports with all the relevant information pertaining to the bug. And chances are, if your bug report is effective, chances are your bug will get fixed. Risk analysis. As a thorough tester, you need to be testing like all aspects of the application, all the edge cases, and all dependencies, everything. But sometimes due to time constraints, we may not be able to test like the whole application. So in such situations, they need to be able to analyze the risk and probably talk to the product owner, project stakeholders to find out like where can we focus our testing on. So this actually comes from experience, common sense, but still it's a very important skill that a tester should possess. And finally, we have end user empathy. We need to feel their pain. Obviously, we are building products for our customers. So we should be able to see the product from their point of view. We need to know who our customers are. If you know them, you will be able to better serve them. So if you get a chance, you can go meet your customers at their site, see what they are doing, and that way you can learn and help create a better product. So I'll just summarize all the qualities that we spoke about today: good communication skills, the ability to negotiate and persuade the stakeholders, be proactive, understand your customers' needs and concerns, curiosity, thoroughness. So these are all, you don't have like a set kind of principles to be like a good tester, but these are all like important qualities that can make us after testing to get a better job. So apart from this, like anybody has like any other traits in mind that would make a tester like a good tester? It's like a complex thing. We have like a bunch of skills, but it's okay. We are not like mastering everything. It's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Like are we like out of these 7, like which ones are like I'm lacking? So just go start improving yourself. Like start learning and just get better at that. So everyone can be a better tester. And with that, I'm just completing my presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions?
Does that go out of style?
Thank you.
Does everyone have to have those same qualities, no matter what the tools are?
It's the ice cream.
Oh, it's the ice cream.
Will you hire anybody without any of those skills?
So how do you find out when you're hiring that someone has all those?
Well, definitely on negotiation, you can start. On negotiation, you can start with a cost.
Is that a challenge for everyone? Trying to identify that a potential employee has?
It really is, and it's not just for what's listed up there, it's for a lot of things. Especially, it's difficult because you have a very limited amount of time with whoever you're interviewing. So you have to come very prepared, and there's only so much that you can tease out of certain questions and certain things, even outside of whiteboard questions. But then I know a lot of companies also have HR policies where they want you to be very detailed about what question did you ask, and what was the answer, and how do you rate that answer? And you want to ask the same question of every person, and you can start out that way, but the interview kind of takes a life of its own, where you're trying to tease these skills out. So you may see something and go, hey, let's follow that for a little bit. I may get some interesting information out of there. And sometimes processes and procedures are in the way of that.
It's an interesting insight, as we're interviewing right now. That was mentioned, what Paul just mentioned was something that we're going through as we're interviewing folks, that all of these consistent questions was brought up, but it is interesting. It's almost like exploratory testing. At some point, you need to use your experience to say, what's up with that? And I talked to someone this week, and great resume, great guy, and all of a sudden, I found this nugget there that wasn't on his resume. I'm like, tell me about this. And I said, even if this doesn't work out, you have to put that on your resume. That's a great piece there that we would have missed. So isn't it funny how even our QA skills come into play, even when we're trying to find a great team member? I would also challenge us, and I love that presentation a lot. Great job on it. Great job, especially your first one.
Your first one,
But think about all of our team members too, the folks that we work with, and those things that are also like that aren't on the resume, if you will, but they're just right there below the surface. And all you need is a little bit of encouragement. Man, there it is. Now you've got someone who's got an exceptional skill at exploratory testing, or thinks about things different, a new way to do a boundary test, or whatever it might be, that is just right there, right below the surface, that we can be good at drawing that out.
I think it's also something to think about when you're writing that requisition for a candidate. Think about these skills in addition to all the automation tools and everything else, the hard skills that you have, because these are probably harder to train than the hard technical skills.
John, I just want to kind of see my comment on the question.
So all these people would go out there and search for them. So a lot of them have great technical skills, but we're talking a lot of soft skills here. And we're going out looking for these type of people. How do we, there are certain skills that you can't teach necessarily. So we got to kind of hold them out. How do we teach those soft skills? You know, maybe find somebody that has 5 out of 6 or most components. How do we get them to be curious? You know, to be test curious. You know, there are certain soft skills that are very difficult to apply.
Actually, I was just going to comment on the curiosity piece. I think one of the things that, at least from my experience, I know at least from some of the last probably person's interviewing skills, I've heard this in the past as well. I think from my perspective, curiosity is probably I wouldn't say the #1 thing, but it's a major component, especially if they're an experienced person I'm hiring. If there's someone a bit more junior, it's good to hear it as well. But you know, I wouldn't say the Rubik's Cube puzzle, put it in front of them and see if they can solve it. But different scenarios you throw at people and say, hey, how do you handle this? And if you throw pretty difficult ones at them, a lot of times you're not going to be able to answer all the questions or come up with the solutions. But the one thing I always listen to at the end is, okay, how would you do it? What is the answer? What did I miss? Those are the things that I find most intriguing from the curiosity. So somebody really cares, they want to know. And that's a big, I won't say tell, but just an interest point that shows me that the person really does care and want to learn, even though they could maybe figure the whole solution out. And I think that's one of the good things for doing some of those scenario type situations that might be difficult, or I wouldn't say impossible to solve, but very hard or detailed level that you might not come up with in an interview session.
By the way, I like Greg's idea. So we were no longer interviewing candidates. We're not interviewing candidates anymore. We'll be exploratory testing candidates. So I don't know how our HR department's going to react to that, but I'm going to propose that. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
I'm a pass-fail. Okay. Who in this room at times feels like they're a programmer, not a tester? A couple of those. That's what the next presentation is.
How about meeting manager versus meeting manager?
Okay, while he's finishing, I've got a few more top 10 from the elevator. When anyone presses a button, make explosion noises. Stare at another passenger for a while, then announce, "You're one of them!" Move to the far corner of the elevator. Greet everyone getting on the elevator with a warm handshake and ask them to call you Admiral. Whistle the first 7 notes of It's a Small World.
Just 2 minutes.
I'm sure Dave could pull this off. Let's see. Stare, grinning at another passenger profile, then announce, "I'm wearing new socks." All right, let's something later. We're gonna miss them.
Yeah.
Very close. I've got none of those. I'm prepared for this.
Hey Todd, do you owe me money?
Can I get an update on my contest?
Okay, let's do an update.
I have 2 entrants, so at this point, the likelihood of a winner and the people that have entered is very high. So if you want to go and just fill this out before you take off, not in the middle of Paul's presentation, and just say what you think is the top 3 in the right order, you have a good shot at winning a nice book on testing.
All right, that's the challenge.
All right, Tyler.
Okay, take it away, Paul.
Okay, here. Hello, Trail. Good? Yeah. All right. Okay, so most of you, actually, I think everybody here knows who I am, so I'm not going to bore you with all the who is this guy stuff. But if you do want to contact me outside of this forum, I've got my contact info here, and I'll have it on the Q&A slide at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit today about automation and being a programmer and being a tester. And as we all know, automation needs coding, right? And there are all these things we have to do, all these tools that are out there that just come and different technologies, and what are we going to do about this? This is scary stuff. This is overwhelming stuff for those that don't have programming backgrounds. So, record and playback is our friend. UTP, UFT, or UTF, whatever they're calling it these days. RANRX Test Complete. Most of these products have some sort of record and playback mechanism. And for those of you that have seen my first presentation called Sail or Fail, you'll recognize the fail mode. Because if you build and use record and playback, it's always good for a ticket for a ride on a fail mode, right? And you thought, yes? Not so bad. Or the Yensi tune this tune. Recording playback has its place, but it gets a bad rap. The reason recording playback gets such a bad rap is because the marketing for recording playback is build your test cases fast. You don't have to be a programmer. You can get a monkey to do this stuff. And it's true. You can record and generate lots and lots of test scripts very quickly with recording playback. The problem is maintenance. Generally, generated code is very hard to maintain. So the next time you get your product release out, you're going to have to re-record some of that stuff. So you have to be mindful of the cost of re-recording. There's going to be some amount of this that's going to happen. This is good for what we call disposable automation. I need something quick. I need something dirty. I need to get over a hump. I know I'm going to throw it away, or I know I'm going to re-record it at the end. As long as you know that going in, it's not intrinsically or inherently evil to use recorded playback. It just has downsides you have to be very, very much aware of. It can also be a very valuable start point. Hey, I know this tool a little bit, but I don't know how to interact with this one particular widget on the screen. I'm going to record that and see how the tool is doing it. That'll maybe give me an idea of how to go back and script it myself. But there are other ways of dealing with automation, other ways of using technology to help you do your job. But don't I have a program? Don't I have to be a programmer? Don't I need a computer science degree to do this stuff? No, you don't. So what if you're not a programmer? You've got technology almost literally at your fingertips today that can help you do your job and use technology to help you do it. Command line is your friend. Pretty much every operating system, everything has some sort of text-based interface that you can type in, execute commands. Most of these interfaces, especially on your bigger operating systems, your Windows, your Mac, your Linux, they've got built-in text and file processing commands that can help you do things. And you can chain these commands together. You can think of them as little building blocks where the output from one command is the input to the other command. We're going to go through a contrived but interesting example of how you might use some command line tools to help you find incomplete transactions that are due to timeouts. So, I'm not sure if you can see this all the way in the back, but here's a contrived hypothetical log file, but not terribly far off of what you might see in some sort of product log file. What we want to do is we want to find those transactions that were incomplete due to timeout. Due to timeout. We don't care about other timeouts. We don't care about other log messages. We only care about those. We can get really close really easily. So one of these command line tools that we're showing here is just Microsoft command prompt. Is called find stir, short for find string. And what it will do is it will go to the file you specify and spit out all the lines that have this particular string in it. In this case, we want to find all the incompletes in our log file. And what did it do? It printed out all the lines that have incomplete. But we want these incompletes due to timeout. We don't care about this incomplete. We only have 4 results. Big deal. I can pull those out, right? What if this is 4,000 lines? And there's not just 2 different types of there's canceled and timeout. There's all sorts of other things and they're all intermixed there. You can kind of extrapolate that out and understand that doing this visually, doing this, quote, manually is a bit of a daunting task. So this didn't get us where we need to be. Let's try something different. So what if instead of looking for incomplete, we look for timeout? Because we want the timeouts, right? Well, unfortunately, we get the same kind of problem. We get the lines we wanted, but we also get some other log messages that have timeout. What we really want here is both. I want to say and. We want to say, I want all the stuff that has incomplete and has time. Fortunately, we have a solution for that, and it's called a pipe. A pipe is a way of chaining commands together, that I alluded to a couple of slides ago. Basically, you take command A and you use a vertical bar, it's called a pipe, and send its output to command B as input, and you can chain these things together. This is supported on most command prompts and shells, so bash, command prompts, PowerShell. I think Android has something, and iOS may or may not. I'm not as well versed on the mobile operating systems as I used to be. So let's look at how we might take these things and chain them together. So what we have here is we say find a string incomplete in this file. So that's going to give us all the lines that contain incomplete. Then take all those lines and shove them into find string for timeout. And then we get the 3 that we want. Again, all that stuff just to pull one line out. Remember, extrapolate this out over 4,000 or 5,000 or 40,000 different lines with a bunch of different configuration information, different configurations of the information. Being able to do stuff like this can quickly help you do your job. Yes?
Is the find string command native to the Windows OS, or was that an add-on? You had to install anything to get for it?
No, find stir, that the question is find stir something you have to install, or is it actually just there in the command prompt? It's one of the native commands in command prompt, at least on Windows 7. I believe it's all the way back to XP. I believe I've used it in XP, but I would have to verify that specifically. So this is great. We could take this and we could put it in some file somewhere and copy and paste it each time we wanted to run it. It's a little inconvenient. Wouldn't it be great if we could store this off somewhere and have a shortcut to get to? Windows and most other operating systems gives us that. On Windows, it's a batch file. The batch file takes a bunch of commands and runs them in a batch. So what we do is we take our command, we copy and paste it in here, and we're good. Now instead of typing all of this stuff in, or instead of copying and pasting it each time we want it, we can just run this particular find incomplete from the command line, and it does the work for us. This is not ideal. The reason this is not ideal is because we've hard-coded this file name. So what if I wanted a different file name? I want to search a different file for this stuff. Or if I wanted to search a bunch of files for this stuff. Maybe my product generates a different file on each transaction, a different file on each execution, or every hour, or every day. Or I want to take some amalgamation of all these files and do that search. Well, these files, these types of files give us the ability to do that. What you have here is a special little piece of syntax that says, give me everything off the command line and run through this command. Now, I'm not going to give you a whole treatise on the syntax for batch files. That's way outside the scope of what we can do here. But if you Google batch file syntax, lots of examples. This syntax and this capability has been around for years and years and years. It's well understood, it's well documented. There are tutorials on all kinds of things on this, easily accessible. Because this particular thing is built into Windows, and there are analogous ones that we'll get to in a second on some of the other operating systems. And what does this look like when we run it? Well, we specify our batch file on the command line, and we say, hey, use this wildcard, this star, to go and find all of these files in this directory that match this pattern, and run it through my process here, and give me all my answers. Dumps it right out there to the console where you can see it. There are ways that you can send that information to a file and send it to the console so that you can post-process it later, or bring it up into an editor and jack around with it. So, we concentrated on Windows command, but not everybody lives there. Some people live in PowerShell, some people live on other operating systems. This is what it looks like in PowerShell, very similar, but instead of find stir, you have a command called select string. You have to specify the command a little bit different way, but it essentially does the same thing. And if you live on the Mac, if you live in Linux, the bash shell has something similar. It's called grep, and behaves basically the same way. So, speaking of Linux, Mac, couldn't find an analogous command either in the command prompt or in PowerShell. You gurus out there will know this. But what if we really just wanted those transaction numbers that match? We didn't care about the whole rest of the text on the line. We wanted that list of transaction numbers. We were going to dump that into a database, or we were going to post-process that and do something else with it. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to do that on the command line as well, and just have our output dumped out to a file? Unix, Linux, etc. gives us the ability to do that using a command called cut. And you can use cut, and the syntax is very obtuse, but the explanation on the documentation page is pretty good. And it says, hey, go get this particular field out of that message and just save that off. So we can use this as input to something else, or as something we save off to use it. So thinking back to the previous slide, I'm sorry, the previous 2 slides here, where we had this file where we put this stuff in, right? Wasn't that a script? Didn't we just program? Right? You don't need this massive background in software development, computer science, and all that stuff to use automation, to use things through technology to help you do your job. You don't have to have all this background to do minimal programming. So we'll talk a little bit about some of these alternate types of tools. We talked about the pipe, the ability to chain commands together. We talked about search string, find string, grep. These were a couple of my favorite back when I was working a previous job. Get content -wait or tail -f. The get content is in PowerShell. Tail -f is on Linux and Mac OS. And what that does is that will watch a file. And each time something's written to the file, it'll print it out to the screen for you. So the -f means follow, the -wait means wait for input. So you can watch the log file being written to live, and when you see a certain thing happen, you can go and interact with the product, you can cause a different thing to happen. You can pair these things up with pipe to say, watch the output of this file, but only let me know when the word timeout appears. Then I want to go look at something right away. So all this sort of assistance to help you do your job, so you're not having to reload things in the browser, reload things into editors, get out of something, get back into something. Windows is really ugly about letting you share multiple open files unless they're open a certain way like that. These can be very helpful in giving you a visual trigger if you want to check something else or performing some other manual activity. wget is a way to get HTML from a website. Go to the URLs at wget, it'll download it all, and you can use these text processing commands to interrogate it, or you can bring it up into a text editor and do some searches or something there. Unix utils is a package I haven't fooled with very much, and I've had sort of a love-hate relationship with it. It's the idea of you can get some of these Unix utilities like tail, like cut, like grep, but run them actually in a Windows window. And I've had some limited success with getting it to run, and other times I yell at it and I use my other favorite tool we'll get to in a second. But this is a way to give you something that's already there, already digestible, and that's well documented if you put information out there on how to use these things. My preference is something called signaling. Basically, if you've lived in the Unix world before, this is Unix in a window. It has all the commands you're used to. You can install whichever ones you want. And it's got all the text processing, all the compilers, all the editors, and everything actually built in there. But you have to run it within its window. It doesn't share capabilities with the outside Windows world. If you're coming from that other background, or if there's some tools that you just can't seem to find for Windows, but you have them for Unix or Linux or whatever, this might be a good option for you. There are tools out there that do a lot of these things for you with nice little GUIs and stuff. That might be more appropriate for what you're doing. Remember, always be appropriate in your tool choices. The nice thing about command line tools is you can put them in those batch files. You can put them in those bash shell files, and you can run them in your continuous integration environment unattended. You don't need a GUI. You don't have to click anything. It just runs, data comes out, and gets stored somewhere, it's used as an input. it to somewhere else. That's kind of why I like a lot of the command line stuff. Not only because it's there, you don't have to download and install anything. So if you go to your lab machine or if you go to a virtual machine that's spun up clean, many of these things are going to be there for you. And just some takeaways. This is a very short presentation. Automation is for everyone. It doesn't have to be this thing where programming is the entry criteria. And not only programming, but extensive programming background of frameworks and test-driven development and code, keyword-driven development, all those other things. That's not your entry criteria. It's not what you're looking for. You're looking for technology to help you do your job. But you still have to learn some things. You may not have to learn C# or Java, but you have to learn how to use these tools and chain them together and what they're good for and what they're not good for. And remember, record and playback gets a bad rep, but it is situationally appropriate. Just understand what you're getting into if you're getting into that. The chances are building a suite or whole automation initiative on top of recording playback is probably not the right thing to do. I can conceive of situations where it might be the right thing to do, but that's really your 1%. Those are the stuff. Okay, questions? Yes, sir.
People that don't know how to find tools like that, what are some of the things that they need to go? For people who don't normally use things like that, how do they go find out about like WGET or curl or Sigma? Where should they go to start researching?
Google. I need to be able to do blah from PowerShell. I need to be able to do blah from the command prompt. And you will get all kinds of people giving you all kinds of advice. Here's a tool, here's a way you can do it built in. Here's some code you can copy and paste into a file and do this stuff. Yes, Mark?
So, grep is awesome.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So then you find out.
And there's egrep too.
So what I learned about grep is there's not really an undo.
You shouldn't need it.
So
You shouldn't need an undo on grep. What are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you grabbing, man? What are you grabbing?
You're overriding the original file.
Yeah, so searching.
That's not on grep, that's on the redirection of the output, which I really should have included redirection.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is a lot of those tools, once you see how powerful they are, you start to use them. And if you want to do a lot of work, you can accomplish unimaginable loads of work with some of that. It's risky if you don't really know what you're doing, which that's how I learned how powerful those tools were. So I'm just curious, how do you go about the learning curve safely?
How do you go about the learning curve safely? You copy things to other places, right? And have your playground, and if you blow it away, it's not the end of the world. I'm not an expert on the file system in Windows, but on Unix, what I used to do is I would protect myself with aliasing certain commands to having the interactive prompts. So if you were going to overwrite, it would prompt you and go, do you really want to overwrite this? So you had that last sort of, yes, I double checked. This
Always a yes.
I don't know if there's a similar capability in the command prompts for but the best I can suggest there is just like anything else. The other day I accidentally deleted all of the proposals off the STP-Con Dropbox ship. Fortunately, I had copied them on my machine first, and then I realized, hey, Dropbox lets you do that restore. But there was a couple of tense moments where I had some swear words that but you protect yourself, right? Understand that you can really screw up with really anything, with Excel, with Outlook, with anything you can screw up. So when you're learning something, build yourself a playground, copy things to other places, and screw up safely, or as safe as possible.
That ties into my question. So I'm a big believer in this knowledge that you gather. Have a strategy for how you're going to remember it in the long run, whether you put it in your Evernote or you have some sort of bookmark. So do you have any process for it? So so grep or whatever, and these places that you're going to learn expertise, that you're building this knowledge base that helps you to come back to it. What has been your experience in that?
I am far less organized than you would like to think I am on that stuff. I had text documents, I had aliases. This is back when I worked primarily in the Unix world. I aliased things where I didn't have to remember, and if I had to take it to another place, or I would take my little profile and I would take it to the other place, and oh wait, I want to change it up a little bit. I'd go and look at the alias, and then I'd use the man page, and I would relearn that way. Would I do that today? I don't know, but I've gotten so comfortable doing that that I kind of work that way still. And it occasionally comes back and bites me, and I spend an hour looking for that thing I found that one day on a web page that I didn't bookmark. But yeah, I'll give you an example. I have a godchild who is like 15 years younger than me. I was still in high school, and when she got into high school, when I was older in college, her mom called and said, hey, Diana's having some trouble with school. I want you to teach her some of your study skills. I laughed. I said, I don't have any study skills. I was blessed with retention. I went to class and did the homework, and the night before I spent a half an hour studying. It's not that I was smart, it's that I could just remember. So nobody wants to, no, I'm not going to teach anybody that. That's a horrible way to go about doing things. So don't do it. Be organized about what you're doing. And Greg is a big fan of building up a catalog, right, for lack of a better term, of stuff that you learn and things that you use so that you can port it to different places and different jobs and different environments. And that's a much more healthy way to do it than what I personally do. It's what I try to do for the team, but then when I get my own little quagmire of stuff, I have to revert back to my Luddite ways and just do it the way I do it. Yes, sir?
I just say I come from more of the Windows side, so PowerShell is what, well, I started out with bank files and things of that nature because that's what was available back then. But, PowerShell's been one of those things that's got a lot of attention development by Windows over the years to replace that file / WMI scripting and things of that nature. But there's really good IDE out there now that you can actually download, but it has a script library of default ones that system administrators and such use right there on the side. So if you're saying, hey, how do you do this? Well, maybe a script already in there. So it's one of those things you can dig out and steal from, if you will. I'm one of those guys that learn by example. If I have to read a whole book on how to do something, good luck with that. I'm more of a try and figure it out, and let's copy and steal what somebody else has already written and adapt it to what I need. And that's how I've done the most. I'm not saying that's recommended practice for anybody, but we have tools like that out there that show you some of those scripts and makes those libraries available that we're talking about. It makes it a little bit easier to adopt and learn from. At least I found it that way.
So, quick thing. I think this actually ties back to curiosity, and I think for folks that have worked with me, there's something I always call, I talk about the white kind of laziness. So that means you're curious and you're looking at something and you're going, somebody has got to have done this before. This looks really useful, which means Google, right? Which means look for something. And that's how I set my library up. Now, there's another set of things for those that have worked with me. And I'm getting this, you're like, hey, Moss, do you know a tool that does blah, right? It's all like, oh yeah, I got one of those, right? And I think enough folks that have worked with me that realize that I keep a library of this. This is not Moss being incredibly smart, it's all in here. No, I actually have a catalog of stuff that I kept that's in certain categories and certain things. That's the only way I can remember it. I'm getting older, right? It's just not there anymore. So, but those are two specific things, I want to point out that one's just stuff that's available out there, because unless you're doing something so bleeding edge that something very, very esoteric, most of the stuff we're talking about is just little things that people have to come across to actually build it. You might be testing or looking at whatever, and the rest is, if you come across tools and things that you have, just catalog it, and there are tons of little databases out there and stuff like that you can tie to. Matter of fact, for a long time, the way I was cataloging all of my test tools was a tool that they had to catalog movies with. But instead of movies, I had achievement. That's like famous titles of test movies.
And I'd just like to add to what Moss said there too, is the whole cataloging of tools, bookmarks, and things of that nature. Of course, my tools list, I think, on my own computer, I probably need to grab to find the tool that I want that tool right now, because my list is so long over so many years of business, and some of them probably aren't as relevant today as they could have been, but some of them don't get very old. To a certain extent, like Paul Harris, a tool that's been out for a long time. Speaking of which, I meant to mention this after the earlier presentation that Mark did. Pairwise.org is a great site about all pairs, and it has a listing of tools that does pairwise testing and things of that nature, which is one of my bookmark things that maybe think about with that. Tool that I've used in the past is PICT, P-I-C-T by Microsoft, that does it. Another one is ACTS. It's, I forget what it stands for, but something, commercialized testing software or something like that. But that's got a bit more developed GUI interface for some people that like to have different selection criteria. So keep those catalogs built up, and you'll be amazed at how often you come back to them over time.
Okay, last question, because I know we want to do the panel.
Oh, I just had a plug for Sigwin. I've used it. No, it is an amazingly powerful tool. I actually used it to remote administrate 3 Linux servers from a Windows machine running X Windows on top of Windows. So, I mean, it'll pretty much do everything. So, just check it out if you have to work in Linux world or whatever. So,
All right. Cool. If you have other questions, feel free to contact me or grab me after or send me an email. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we're on home stretch. Larry, how many participants? All right, come on down.
I guess we're going to start the panel interviews. I guess I need to cheat. So I got thrown into this at the last minute by my boss. Pretty good prime minister. So I'm going to do my best standing here. So I'm Larry Henderson from GameStop. I'm the Senior Quality Assurance Manager. Kind of all over the place. I do a little bit of performance, a little bit of web services, a little bit of ETL. So work very closely with the intern over here. I guess we'll let everyone kind of say a little piece about themselves. So,
Sure. Well, how do you know me? Greg Pascal, I work at Argo. My niche is really automation tools. I consider myself kind of an innovator in the QA space with technology. That's kind of like, there's no automation questions.
I've got one in my head.
Gordon Pascal, working at Assets. I'm the chief QA comedian. I think most folks in here know except do a bunch of these, but I'm responsible for the QA teams on the vendor side.
David Turner.
Go.
Hello.
David Turner, I'm the senior architect at GameStop for QA. Also run the automation teams, so anything automation for the enterprise or government, smacking people around, that kind of stuff.
All right, which one do you guys want to start with? Green or white? Go with the white one first? All right. Okay, so the question is, how early should QA become involved in development? Should it be during the creation of requirements, after development, or during development?
So we were actually talking about this. So I actually thought all of those were too late. So I would like to be involved when they're even thinking about building whatever it is that they're building. Because if you're in development, I may or may not actually hire the right team, depending on what they're building. Right? So as early as possible, pre-IPO, first round of funding, the third employee but in all seriousness, I mean, it really is as early as possible. Is sort of my input. It might be during architectural design, conception, whatever, because you actually want to be thinking about how can the product actually be tested. Because there are plenty of things that have evolved across my careers where you're looking at it going, you cannot possibly test this as an actual product. I mean, you had to have built-in hooks, or else you're going to be trying to test it in our most favorite place in production, and that's just usually not going to end well. So definitely come across multiple products where we're sitting there, we get their release time, and I would have a very uncomfortable conversation with whoever the stakeholders and say, I actually cannot test this, my team cannot test this, we can't do this. And they're looking at it like, why? Well, the product is designed so it actually cannot be tested anywhere else except production. well, who decided that? Well, I wasn't here. So, if I was here, I would have said something and said, you guys may want to put a little hook in. And a lot of it is, yes, you can always retroactively put a hook in, but usually those things are prohibitively expensive and nobody wants to take on that expense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, David and I run into this quite too frequently in game stuff, where we'll partner up with a third party to do something like replace our email notification system, only to find out that when the contracts were negotiated with non-IT folks, they decided, oh, we don't need a QA system, we just need a process, and that's all we worry about. So, okay, what happens when we have a bug, which we're having to deal with right now? Well, okay, I guess you only test during these off hours, but wait, we got a marketing push to do tonight, so don't test during that time frames. When you run your load test in this, we don't want all these emails to get duplicated or to get timed out. You know, it's a big mess. So.
I like what Moss said. I want to kind of piggyback on that idea of building testability. And we're finding, maybe I could share a topic on this, something we've started, which is called the Open Test Technology Forum at Argo. And the whole idea was to bring all sorts of folks together, not just the QA folks, but we've got dev folks, believe it or not, we've got marketing people there. I'm feeling we're close to getting an HR person or two to show up. But what we found, at least with bringing the dev folks in and on the test, was as soon as we kind of came together at the table, you know, we were talking in this presentation a couple ago about how we break these boundaries down and stuff. Once we started to get face-to-face and talk with folks, they actually started to suggest options that added to the quality in the software development lifecycle. Things like the developer actually suggesting, why don't I summarize what I just did and how I would suggest we might go about testing it. I'm like, did I just hear that? It's a miracle to hear something like that. So you build in those partnerships. But it's at that same time when you're able to talk about testability. So it's just not thrown over the wall, that you actually know they put the right kind of hooks to get in there and actually hit it with a web service call or some other tool that lets you get in there and do a lower level, almost like a unit level test, something that's so you know it's something working. So I love that, but I think you should get in as early as you can. If you hire in somewhere and you know who's developing your app, go ahead and meet that guy. Go ahead and see that person face to face and begin to build those relationships.
Yeah, there's a project that David and I are looking into right now. We're actually scratch padding it a little while ago. The project's not even funded yet. You know, we're just going in for estimations to get funded and everything, but we're already seeing on. You know, we have to make estimates off like here's a PDF with a box and a couple of arrows. Now tell me your detailed estimates on this. Happens all the time, but we're already seeing some flaws in the thought process of the high level architecture for this that are making us think how we're going to test this.
And I love the example of the hand puzzles because we encounter things like that all the time where we have this thing that we know that we're going to have, but oftentimes they're all super glued together in some weird way. So you got to kind of navigate through all the different puzzles at once. And if you're not thinking about that early at like a strategy level before the project even comes, then you miss a lot of that, and you'll get to the point where you're delivering it and all those pieces come together and try to glue them all back together, and things just don't work right.
So I'll save this one for last. I want to ask you a question.
So I think I know the answer to my question before I ask it. But I'm going to ask you. We want to get QA involved as early as possible. That's not always the mindset of the people that you're working with, though. How do we convince them? QA needs to be here at the earliest possible stages.
I'll jump in. I think what Mark talked about in his presentation is a good approach, that somehow that dev team doesn't understand the quality of what we bring to the table. So there's a misunderstanding. They might be perceived QA as the enemy, which is so often the case in a dev team. So I think that's important, that you are a good marketer, I guess, of what we bring to the table, what's the value that we have there, so that we partner with them. It's not something that's just going to happen through a PowerPoint deck or whatever. It's going to take some time of sewing and presenting some facts in a certain way. One of the things that Mark's done, by the way, you know, I've been going through this study about how ideas spread. I read this book on Audible, and it talks about how powerful a visual is. So I'm a big fan of having some kind of visual. Go ahead and look through your quality center or your defect management tool and see what kind of data is already there that you can come and make a case and say, hey, did you know that these are things that we can provide to you? That's a lot of what Mark was talking about. Or historical things of if QA gets involved earlier, how much we can help alleviate defects that never even need to be, put in to begin with. So, but I do think it's a long road to haul, and you really want to get in early. It's hard as damage control to do later on. So,
So I can jump in with, so I'm a big believer in learning from mistakes. Right? So if you're thinking about doing something new like this and trying to get an estimate, there's probably another product or project that's gone through where there's data indicating, had we done this earlier, had we actually, when it's designed in some testability, it would be in much better shape, right? Highlight those examples and sort of get the team to learn from those mistakes that were made, right? That's usually pretty powerful. A lot of this comes with experience, right? It's one of them, right? So there was a book I remember reading about your first software project, usually successful, your second one's an utter failure. Why? Right? Because you haven't made the mistakes yet, right? So let the teams learn from those mistakes that hopefully other people have made and roll that into your designs. So, and folks that have been in the software industry, I don't think this is that new. It's just, it needs to be brought front and center so it's actually highlighted. And I don't think I've ever come across somebody and said, oh, we should design testability in. They're like, what are you talking about? No, I don't want to design. Nobody says that anymore. Right? They're actually worried about, well, how much cost is that? How early? When do I actually, what sort of people are we going to bring in to actually be able to help us do that? Right? Those are the types of discussions. And that's more about how many people versus how early.
The only thing I would add is perseverance and psychology. People oftentimes take the QA part of your title as a almost derogatory statement, like you're not at the same playing level of development, you're not the same playing level of architects. You just got to kind of go in there, and like I said, I try not to say this, but punching people in the face helps. Go in there and point out their mistakes and say, look, this is not going to work, and document it, and then wait for it to not work, and then come back and say, I told you so. Now let me come in and help you next time.
CC and I are just doing that right now this week. We're like, yeah, that's going to fail. No, it's not. 2 days later, fail. Sorry, I hate to be the weather forecaster, but it looks pretty darn obvious to where we're sitting, right? So it just builds up credibility.
It's funny that David said comment about punching people in the face, because I think for the question I'm going to ask, which I previewed to him earlier, he's going to punch me in the face for this one. But we talked about this quite a bit, so I've been to quite a few conferences recently, like the Gartner conference, where they were really pushing on the whole shift left, right? Shift left, right? Shift left. Awesome, right? So, so the whole thought is, okay, with automation, well, why is QA even doing that? The developers are closest to the code. Just let them develop the automation because they understand how to program. They understand how to program. Just let them automate in their own language even. Just get out of there. In fact, we're going to DevOps or QA. Really, you should just be an exploratory tester. You're not involved anyway. So let's see your thoughts on getting rid of automation, giving it to dev, and QA just go spring punch for a little bit.
I've got a really good example for that. So recently we were working on preparing some of our services tests that chain together the e-commerce part of the website. And they just implemented a tokenization method where we would tokenize a credit card but through a third party. So I went to the development team and said, how do I need to do this? And they gave me back the development documentation to do it and call it through the API. Turns out that's how you would do it if you're going to program as a developer. So the method and the approach that they gave me was what they coded. And I ended up replicating exactly what they coded, just in a different language. Which was not what I wanted to do. It does not give me a functional test. It gives me the same programmatic capabilities that they had. So I actually had to scrap the entire thing and start over and then go from a black box perspective as a functional tester and call the APIs as they had coded. So that was an example that I like to go back to now when everybody says, why can't developers do automation? It's because you got to have the mindset of both sides. You need to be able to do what they're doing in certain cases, but you also need to look at it from a functional perspective. How does the end user, how does the system interact with that code to do the thing that it needs to do?
Isn't it interesting that if you build a house, that the person building it isn't inspecting the house? because they have a different perspective on it, right? They're interested in safety, other things like that. And as a QA engineer, I'm an advocate for the customer, right? And so I have a different mindset than when I stepped into to automating. What you saw Mark present on that dashboard that showed those squares, it's a good example. So when we started to inquire about putting this together, we reached out to some of our engineering folks to get some insights, some of the folks that deploy code, and they're like, why the heck are you going to do that? Why do you need to do that? Right? Because as someone who is interested in the quality of things, I want to know that the quality of my environment's in good state. Doesn't that make sense? As a tester, isn't it important to know that our environment's not a moving target? So as being an advocate for a good quality product, that's one of the things I might want to just keep an eye on, is having a radar going around every once in a while and saying, what was that blip on the radar all of a sudden? Does that negate all that testing we just did yesterday? And lo and behold, just a few days ago, it actually showed a blip on the radar. And guess what? That environment stopped working, and nobody to this day is fessed up to how something got deployed into it. So we know things like this happen, and even though that doesn't necessarily look like QA traditional, it brought insight to something that really matters to us, which is knowing our environment.
I'll add one last thing. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. A lot of things that, and so to just add on that. So the more important thing is checks and balances. Right? That's just standard good engineering practices. Right? So as a software engineer, as an engineering professional, you should know that checks and balances is a good thing. So I would actually disagree with the statement being made that that's actually that's more efficient or whatever. No, it actually isn't. It's going against basic engineering theory. Checks and balances.
My answer is a little more face punching, where I'm like, you can't even turn over your code in time. Why would you even want to try to automate it? It's true. We're always delivering like sprint, next sprint plus one.
Got a rough shop over there.
We punch faces. All
It's like
right.
we left in time.
I know. I think we left it time.
Or did you? Maybe you should have stayed around.
All right.
Okay, so we got about 5 minutes, so I'll go to the last question here. So it says ISO 29119 testing standard, benevolent guidance or evil incarnate?
So, does everybody know what the standard is?
Because you paid the $200 to get it.
$200 per section.
It's an alternative to the
This is the new one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a nightmare for us all the time.
You want to give the 2 seconds?
Go ahead.
So it's basically ISO's new testing standard for what they believe effective testing could or should be. So it's being proposed, it's going out for reviews, and et cetera, et cetera. I have actually not downloaded copies of the listed snippets because I actually think it's actually more than $200 than a copy.
So I think it's like $200 to $400 per section, something like that.
Wait, is it past it?
No, I don't think it's passed.
No,
yet.
some of it is.
Some stage, this is the initial pass,
Yeah.
it hasn't gone through final approval, but it's
Yeah.
on its way with all its final screws.
Yeah.
The initial portions that I read, my personal take on it was pretty equal. They were getting a little too prescriptive on what they constituted what good or effective testing is. So I think for folks in healthcare or finance, there are a lot of audits that we deal with, okay? SAS, SOX, HIPAA, all sorts of different things. Some of those things are, I understood why they're trying to go do that, but some of the implementation makes no sense, and this is, to me, borderline getting there, right? So the jury's out on it, but boy, that looks really, really scary. I'm afraid that that's going to drive some sort of regulation in the testing market, and it will force the industry down a path that's very dangerous. It's sort of like, hey, everybody knows if you tested just the requirements, how good is the quality of the requirement going to be? You're pretty sucky, right? Because you're going to go through your predicted scenarios and just requirements. You got to do more, and that's just understood in sort of in our industry. It's going there in a really, really dangerous fashion. So it's just my 2 cents on
No. Nice one.
it. Yeah, I said somebody should explore to test that.
Yeah. Shift left. Okay, any questions? I think that's all we nice ice cream cookie downstairs. All right. Thank you.
Todd, I have a winner. All right, come on up.
All right, so first I will give you the right answer. Now realize, of course, this might be a little subjective, but my son's pretty scientific, so I trust him. So he said that the most difficult one was the Kirby copter. That's number one. Number two is the 4x4. And I'm like, why? He's like, there's no middle. So then the next one, a lot of people got this as being high. The 5x5 follows, because there is a middle, so that way you at least know on that side what it's supposed to be. And then this was number 4, which is different than the gold one, even though they look exactly the same. There's some different strategy with that. So the person who got closest was Brian McIntosh.
All right.
Huh? Which one would you like, Brian?
I'm trying to explore.
All right, it's great. And so the person who came in next closest was our second presenter. Yep, good job.
All right.
So what were their guesses, just curious?
So they both had that number 6. Okay, they both had this as the correct first place, and then this one, 6, 4, 5. Then you had this one as third, and Brian, you had both this and this in your mix. So basically, they were the only 2 people that in their top answers had 3. Everybody, a lot of other people had 2, but they were the ones that had 3. Answer your question. Just keep me honest, right?
QA.
Trust and verify.
Yeah, trust and verify.
I guess.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for your patience today. Lisa wants to tell you what's on the little handout she gave you. Yes, Lisa?
Okay, so I have one of these on the back of my phone, and it's kind of a wipey deal to clean your screen. And so I'm sure you guys are all smart and read the instructions. But anyway, it'll keep sticking on there, but you just take it off and obviously use the non-sticky side within your screen.
You mean I wasn't supposed to eat it? Do you have the number to poison control?
So thank you for all the voting. So we'll be off for the summer, but the next session is going to be around September, October. So we hope everyone will come back and we'll have more presenters then. Thanks for all the presenters.